I have Carl joining me on this episode, aka Holy Macaroni on Twitter, and he's going to talk about a project that he's working on from Fund 9 in Project Catalyst, all around security. And we're going to get some security tips on how to stay safe online as well and to protect your crypto assets. So I think that's really, really important. We're in a bear market at the moment, so anything that we can learn to keep our assets protected is really, really important. So Carl, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's get into a little bit of your background first and learn a little bit about how and what you do in general, and then how you got into the Cardano ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to do that. Let's see if I can kind of keep it in the Cliff Note version here. I started, my career out of high school really started in the military. So I spent 13 years in the Navy. I did EOD work, ordnance disposal, electronic warfare, and things like that. So completely unrelated to the field we're in now. But out of that, I was on a deployment in Iraq at the tail end of my military career. And, long story short, I met some people in the cybersecurity field. I had a little bit of my own personal knowledge background. And, again, long story short, I got back from the deployment. We had stopped communicating. A couple of months later, one of them reached out to me to see if I was interested in a entry-level position in cybersecurity working for the federal government. So I took that opportunity. It seemed really fun, and it's just grown from there. Coincidentally, I've also been in the field here for 13 years as well. I started out as a regular security analyst. I moved up to managing an environment on my own, and now I've been consulting as well as architecting, consulting, all sorts of things like that for security vendors as well. So, I support a lot of enterprise companies around the entire world, right? So that's where I am now. My whole idea was I've been in cyber, I've been in cybersecurity for so long. I'm active in the Cardano community. I didn't have I'm not able to write a smart contract. I cannot code a blockchain so I'm like, how can I help the community or be more involved in the community? So that's where I came up with the idea.
Gotcha. Now, I listen to a cybersecurity podcast called Darknet Diaries, and this guy goes through all of these horror stories of people getting hacked and ransomware stories and all sorts of things like this. And have you got any war stories like that you can share, or any experiences like that were kind of like highlights of your career?
Yeah, indeed. So I have a lot of them. I'll take one of the most drastic
Right.
things that I've seen actually happen. So I do a lot of the architecting, the solutions, the designing, all of that kind of work. But in what comes along with that, I also support our friends, a lot of forensics teams, forensics investigators. So, they get called into a ransomware case, and then, they're doing all of their stuff with FTK Imager, pulling all of the, just doing all of their investigation and forensics work. So I come in along and support them as well from a solution, product security perspective. And we are in a case, and what's interesting about doing this as well is I'm basically under attorney-client privilege clauses for dozens and dozens of cases, probably for the rest of my life. So when I'm 80 years old, I could get called up for to testify, or who knows, right? Matter of fact, I just got called the other day about a 3.5-year-old case to ask some questions about it from a lawyer. But these cases are very interesting because they usually start out with us joining the call, and the first thing the business says to us, one, why didn't the security product we have stop the ransomware? For the second thing they say is, we just got ransomware. It's the first time we've been infected. Well, usually it's something that they configured wrong, something very simple. And then for that second part is typically they've been infected or compromised to some degree 8 or 10 months beforehand, right? That person launching ransomware, they've already been in your environment for almost a year, probably. Credential harvesting, running tools that maybe somebody may may be familiar with called Mimikatz or Cobalt Strike. These are credential harvesting, data harvesting. Also, these are tools to allow them to get in your environment and get what they need. The main reason being is if you don't want to pony up and pay the ransomware fee, then they come back with, hey, well, we also have your data, so we'll just release it to the public if you don't pay us. Um, so we see a lot of cases like that. We saw one case one time where they were in, typically if somebody does get ransomware, it's very noticeable almost immediately, just because of all the pop-ups and things happening. But this one enterprise company didn't really notice it for the first 2 or 3 days. I think it happened on a weekend. Everybody went home, and it just propagated a whole lot by that point. Well, we were investigating with them, going through the incident response, and I think about week 2 into it, they kind of they just made the ultimate decision to basically more or less just throw away their entire data center, all their computers, all of their network appliances. They literally spent 2 years rebuilding a brand new environment. They
Wow.
just couldn't, they didn't have the proper storage backup. They didn't have all of these mechanisms in to recover from a situation like this, right? So
That
yeah.
is incredible. So it was cheaper for them to rebuild everything and take 2 years to do it properly. That's absolutely incredible. That's a painful lesson learned.
And it's a company that we're all aware of too. I can't say the name, but it's just crazy to think about what they had to deal with, the money they lost, the people, it's just awful, right? And those are, they're very hard conversations to be a part of, to be that one to say, well, this is what you're facing. It's not an easy thing to do, but yeah, interesting nonetheless.
Wow. Wow. Okay. We're seeing a big uptake of this ransomware and data breaches here happening in Australia. We've had one of our big telcos, Optus, get breached, and 10 million customers. That's half of Australia's population, by the way. But half of Australia's population leaked online. That data was tied in with our Medicare system as well. So Medicare got hacked as well. And then agency after agency just started falling and toppling over. So it's a scary place to be. And I know my data is floating around the dark web somewhere and people are just using it. I'm getting SMSs every day from random giveaways, and my post is in the mail and I have to type in my details to go collect it. So it's a terrible space at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. The odds are, if you are a person that's ever used the internet, some amount of your information is out there. You could go to, there's a lot of tools out there. You could go to a website called Have I Been Pawned? And you can put in your email address or phone number, and it'll show you any and all of the data leaks that you've potentially been involved in, been a part of.
Yes, as I slowly load up that website and type in my details to see if I've been pawned. All right, so Carl, what have you been doing, or what is this Project Catalyst thing that you're doing for the Cardano community? How is it going to protect our data? How is it going to protect our online lives?
So I was just kind of pondering this idea for months, right? Ever since I think Fund 7, where, I have my skills. I don't know how, I'm not a blockchain coder, for a lack of a better way of putting it. But, I wanted to help the community in my own way. So I came up with this idea. I also didn't want to charge people. I didn't want to charge Bob or Nancy or Team A or Team B individually for me helping them. It just didn't feel good to do that. So I figured, maybe if Catalyst supported me through that in my funding, then I could provide those services to people. So, I'm running Twitter Spaces every week. I typically run 4 to 5 of them. I just kind of have a topic each week to fill the gap in audio, and just kind of have something to talk about. But they're really spaces for people to hop in. It's just dedicating my time to, if somebody wanted to hop in and talk about something, I'm there for them. Um, I'm also doing individual meetings. So certain weeks I may have more meetings, and that might reduce how many Twitter spaces I do. Like this week is actually completely filled with individual meetings or team meetings, to where they just want to meet with me on a privacy focused kind of way, and I just help them out. Yeah, my website epochsec.io. you can go there and you can listen to my recorded Twitter Spaces. I also have a pinned blog up there for any documentation I write. I think I have about 6 documents up there right now. I'm actually pretty far ahead than what I expected. But those documents can be improved, right? If anybody out there has any skills or knowledge on things I could add to it, let me know, right? This is not for me. I already know these things. This is out there to help people. So yeah, and you can also go to my website, epochsec.io. You could go to the contact page, and I actually have my Calendly link on there. You could pick a day and time. It'll automatically generate a meeting for us, and I'm happy to talk to you about whatever you would like to talk about. But yeah, that's the overall premise and kind of the plan of this. And and what I did with my funding request through Catalyst is I said I'll take this much. I would like this much funding for exactly 1 year of time. I don't know what will happen after that 1 year. I don't know if I'll try Catalyst again or if I'll turn it into something else, or maybe I would like it just to become a community driven thing at that point where people are taking this idea and doing it on their own. Um, I kind of would like to see another outcome as well, to where other people with other specific skill sets that could help the community. Maybe this idea will help them generate their own idea, and maybe even a better idea than what I have.
Okay, so essentially, it's you got the Catalyst funding so that you can provide free consultation to the community around security in general. Is that correct? That's the nutshell of it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. And I know this type of service costs quite a lot of money. Like if you were a private consultant providing cybersecurity expertise to anyone, you'd be charging like hundreds, thousands of dollars possibly for this kind of consultation. So this is well worth it. What type of people are coming to you at the moment asking for help and consultation and whatnot?
Yeah. So it's kind of cool because I expect this to be at first it was a slow ramp up, and I just thought it would continue to be a progressive, just a linear, a gradual increase in uptick of usefulness of the project for people. But I've already had, I've probably talked to a dozen individuals. I've already had calls with 3 different teams, and I think they're trying to set up follow-up calls with me. But it's really just most of what I'm doing is, most of the people reaching out to me are people with a very novice skill knowledge base in protecting themselves. I have people reaching out to me specifically if they're looking to use a VPN thing, or if they may run a scenario by me on something that's happened and how would they address it. I have people reaching out to me looking for basic mentoring on getting into cybersecurity, right? The more people we have in this field, by default, the more people it'll be aware, right? So I'm glad to mentor anybody that wants to get into the field, right? And then teams are also looking for my help. The premise usually behind that is they don't have somebody with necessarily a high skill set in this field. Maybe they do have the knowledge, but they want to run it by me as well to say, look, I have this set up, or I've seen these type of events. Am I in the right position, or what else do I need to think about? What I can't really do, I can do this, but not on an official basis because it takes an entire business in itself, documentation, legal things, a lot of extra fees. I can't come in and do an official pen test or an audit, but I will happily do like an unofficial pen test or audit for you if you're low on funds and you need to wait some time to do that. I can give you, I can try to do some of that for you to get you on the right track, so that when you do hit that official pen testing or auditing, you're more prepared.
Right, that's cool. That's a really broad spectrum of people coming to you, and a nice, I think, spectrum of consultation services that you can provide for people. So, people may be listening into this and thinking it's for teams and for projects that are building on Cardano, but no, the way you described it, it's anyone, like you said, novices and people just wanting to protect themselves, just getting into crypto even, and just want the right advice. So that is absolutely fantastic.
Another type of person reaching out to me are experts in my field as well. I'm actually working with a lady right now that is writing up a document, and I do have some funds set aside to support people if they want to write something up for me or something like that. So I have experts reaching out to me, loving the idea, looking to do something maybe similar, or just wanting to support me. So if you're an expert, you're welcome to reach out to me too. I don't know everything, right? So if you're in the field, we can help each other, help the community, right?
Now, in terms of some advice that you can give to our listeners, do you have any tips on how to stay safe online and keep our lives secure and not pawned, like my email address here that I'm now looking at on the Have It Been Pawned? And yep, I have. It's a massive list.
Yeah. Yeah, a great thing to look at. I would let me so first of all, I'll just list out a few different things. I thought about this before the call. I just kind of cherry picked a few things. But if you go to epochsec.io, if you go to my information feed page, the first pinned post up there is a list of all of my current documentation. You can dig into each one if you want. Some things I would say, and I say that I've said this 100 times, and I'll probably say it 1,000 times before my project is over. Just stop clicking on stuff. Don't do it. If you don't know what you're doing, just don't click stuff, right? A lot of what I do, and I'll give an example, is I suggest to people to build correlating information. If I get Bob messaging me about XYZ, or if my best friend even messages me, I'm going to go, before I try to go to any service or anything, I'm going to correlate information. I'm going to attempt to either build trust or lose trust by correlating different pieces of information, right? So do your research. To be cliche, do your research, but find different types of information. Find them on social media. Find their LinkedIn. Go to wherever they are talking on social media, whether it's Telegram or Discord or Twitter or whatever it might be, and just kind of search their names and kind of see their communication style. Even, right? Do you trust them based on the way they communicate, or do they communicate at all? Right? Things like that. I would say some easy things to do. If you're on public Wi-Fi, make sure you're using a VPN. Conrad and I actually may get together on a weekend sometime in the next couple of weeks to do like a Discord call to kind of talk to people, the community, about VPN, the pros and cons, and kind of the options, right? There are easy VPN services out there like NordVPN or something, but there are more complicated things like OpenVPN. But if you're on public Wi-Fi, use a VPN service, not for anonymity, but for privacy, right? Just to kind of have that another barrier of protection for you. Don't sign into your web browsers. It's very easy to sign into a web browser with your Google account, and then it's just as easy to sync that with other devices, right? I would practice not doing that. All of our wallets in, there are those DApp you have an allow list in most of your wallets where you allow access to a DApp when you connect your wallet, or a Discord server, Hazelbot, for example. You can connect your wallet to Discord servers too. Just practice managing that. Don't leave them. It's easy to be signed up on 10 or 20 different Discord servers and 5 or 10 different wallets, and then you stop using some of them, and a year goes by, and you forget that you actually have those connections live, right? So most wallets, I know I use Eternal. They have a DApp allow list in there, and you could go and just remove them periodically. I try to keep it completely cleaned up. I don't mind having to re-authenticate and re-add them every single time I access something. I'm fine with that, right? And the challenge with a lot of people is the mentality that this is just a pain, right? It's annoying, right? But I can promise you, the more you practice it, the more it just becomes natural to you to do these things, right? What else might I add? Use public tools. In your quest in correlating information or researching something, or if you get a URL or a file, you could go to VirusTotal. VirusTotal is probably the most commonly used platform out there in the security community. You can upload a file, you can put in a hash value, you can put in a URL, and it'll report back on you the safety of it. Google has a website checker too called Transparency Report. .google.com. You could go there, and they have a a checker for websites there. I also like to look up domain information. Who.is, right? It'll show you all of the. If you're looking up a URL, you could go research ownership or creation time, or you can even dig further into the business name and look at who's registered for the business and where it was registered and stuff like that. So depending on the situation, you might want to dig in further like that. The obvious stuff around wallets or your mobile devices, right? I was talking to, I was working on my next set of Twitter Spaces, and Lathisen from Drip Drops had a post out there talking around things like SIM locking and two-factor authentication. Now, I thought that was a really good point. Use two-factor authentication, right? Don't just rely on a password for authenticating to something. You can use something called YubiKey. It's a hardware two-factor authentication device. But if you're not okay with that, software authentication is okay too. I'd probably suggest Google Authenticator. But he brought up a good point to where, and this goes to a lot of the things I talk about around layered security. Do not rely on just one single thing to protect you. So don't just rely on 2FA. Also use SIM locking. My Android device, for example, has a settings feature to where I can lock my SIM based on an authentication mechanism like a password, I believe. What that'll prevent is a bad actor from attempting to socially engineer your service provider into sending them a SIM card that then they can put in a mobile device, and then they can start receiving all of your text messages and calls. And what comes out of that is then they can, if you're also using two-factor SMS, which I don't recommend getting SMSs for your two-factor authentication, but then they can get your 2FA that way as well. So if they brute force your password, get a SIM, they can also bypass 2FA. So I could talk all day long about all the different things you can do, but those are some things I wanted to mention. Yeah. Just go check out my documentation, and if anybody wants to drill into something deeper, let me know.
Now, I was actually going through your checklist there and trying to mark off, what I actually do as well. So I think I did okay already. Okay. So I'll just do a quick recap for people. So if anyone is trying to contact you, look them up. And this is really common. Like if you're dating someone and you just met them, the first thing you do is Google them, to see their history and their online profiles and whatnot. So that's I think a lot of people do that these days. And then VPN, of course, I use a VPN. I use Hide My Ass. I'd like the name, so I use that one. It's pretty good. I whitelist everything on my wallet. I just wiped everything the other day. I use website checkers, Whois, always looking up, the company details, see if it's actually registered properly. Two-factor authentication, yep, definitely. And I do have a YubiKey. Not many people have these. These devices are great, unless you lose them. So it's a pain in the ass if you lose them, but they're fantastic. But I did not do SIM locking on my phone, so I don't know if that's available on an iPhone, but we'll look that up to see if it's possible. But I think I did okay.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing wonderful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed.
Well, thank you so much for that. All those security tips, and thank you for doing what you're doing with your Catalyst 9 proposal there and the project in general. Is there anything else that you want to add in regards to what you're doing and everything you're contributing?
I would no, I think I would just close out with a mentality that I usually have, and I would really strongly suggest people to practice this mentality. I would rather miss every 9 out of 10 opportunities instead of getting compromised that 1 out of every 100 times. So I would rather only be smart enough to get one good opportunity out of 10, because otherwise, if I try to take advantage of every opportunity, it only takes that one time to compromise and wipe all of that away, right? So if you're not sure of something and you're doing your research and you feel like you're under some time limit and this thing is about to happen, just forget it, right? If you're not confident in it, it's okay. It's a lot more detrimental to get that compromise 1 out of 100 times than it is to miss 9 opportunities, right?
That's a brilliant way to end it. A lot of these scams use that emotional factor in there, like a giveaway scam or something. You know, it's time limited, and it preys on that human emotion to act really quickly. And this is when you're most vulnerable. You're not thinking straight. You come home late at night, you see this giveaway thing, and then you connect your wallet and it gets wiped. So it's definitely some good advice there. But Carl,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast and sharing everything that you're doing. And it's absolutely brilliant. I'll make sure all the links and everything for your website, EpochSec, is in the show notes as well. But I think we mentioned it so many times. I think everyone's gotten it. But I'll make sure the links are there just in case.
Oh yeah, and also because I know that people have different flavors for reading things. Two things: you could also go to epochsec.getbook.com. I only have one of my documents up there now, but if you prefer Getbook, by the end of the day, I'll have all of them transposed over to Getbook as well. Also, I just had a conversation with Blockchain Learning yesterday, David Baxter, doing some wonderful things over there. Lido Nation's already used their services to build training. I'm talking to them about getting my stuff transposed over to some training for them as well. So depending on what you like, there are options out there. Also, Pete, I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to use your platform to bring awareness to this project. And
Thank you very much, Carl. And I'm sure we'll chat again very, very soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating.